name is Mazor, and I teach AI with a human touch. What I mean by that is I'm just as interested in what AI has to teach us about being human as I am about teaching AI. Now, I'm not a computer scientist nor a quantum physicist. I'm trained as an architect, and I've taught thousands of people how to use generative AI over the past year. But a year ago, if you asked me if this is what I would be doing, standing on the stage talking to you about artificial intelligence, I never would have guessed it.
I was trained as an architect. I acted as a university administrator, making sure that people like you were warm or cold in their space and could study and do the work that you do. But I took a break in April of 2022 after the pandemic. And I started playing around with an application called Midjourney. It's the application that has generated all of the images that you're going to see today. And I fell deep into the AI rabbit hole. So what I want to talk to you about today are the lessons that I've learned from what machines can teach us about human creativity. And it starts in the most unlikely of places. Not there. Have you ever been so cold that you can't think of anything else other than how you feel? Yes. Yeah. Well, it happened to me this past summer. My family was on a trip in upstate New York, and I came down in my sundress, ready for a nice, warm summer day. And it was freezing. I sat in the hotel lobby and I was trying to write. I'm working on a book. And I couldn't think about anything other than the air on my body. And it reminded me of another day when I was equally uncomfortable. I was standing on the subway platform waiting and waiting and waiting for the train to come. And it was a terrible time in my life. My father had just had a stroke. I was going through a divorce, and the job that I loved so much was coming to an end. My life was in chaos, and I remember standing there, and I had an epiphany. At this moment, I am the perfect temperature. Temperature, in its deceptive simplicity, sets the stage for much of our daily life. It affects our comfort, our concentration, and even our state of mind. And it affects our creativity. I would even learn that it's how generative AI works. Now, I learned some of these lessons when I was working as a university administrator, and I was getting what we called hot and cold calls. Any of you put one in? Yeah. Sometimes you're in a room and you're just not comfortable, and so we would deploy our engineers to go and check out the systems and make sure that they were working okay. And most of the time, things were working just fine. In fact, some of the people would be hot, and in the same room, people would be cold. Well, we call this thermal comfort. And according to the American Society of Engineers, thermal comfort is a state of mind. The idea that our bodies are at homeostasis with their environment, it's subjective. And it turns out that they can only design for about 80% of the people in the middle of the bell curve. Now, my father is an engineer, and he spent his life working at Carrier, the inventor of air conditioning. But he didn't like the odds that he could only satisfy 80% of his customers, so he went into a line of business that was a lot more predictable, transporting fruits and vegetables. And his favorite stories were about bananas. Now, you all know bananas. Bananas grow in tropical climates. and they ripen at room temperature. But if you want to slow down the ripening process, you want to make sure you refrigerate bananas to between 56 and 58 degrees. You see, for bananas, the perfect temperature depends on what stage of ripeness you're looking for. It also depends on whether you're Chiquita or Dole. They each set their perfect temperatures 1 degree apart. Creative climates, they are no different. If you want to create an environment of innovative thinking, you want to make sure you have a place for divergent thinking, for connecting the dots between disparate elements and putting them together in new and different ways. But if you're trying to deliver a product to market, you want to narrow down those choices, working towards precision, autonomy, repetitive design. And these are all part of the creative process. Now, this is where we're going to play a fun little game. Temperature, it's also important in artificial intelligence. And we're going to learn this by just shouting out the first word that comes to mind when I say, I love. Are you ready? I love. Okay. How many people, raise your hand if you said you? Okay. You are operating at a 0 temperature. That's good. 0 is the most popular word, the most frequent word that comes after I love. Now, how many of you said your mother? How about puppies, bananas, rainbows, chocolate? Those are all valid, but you're operating at a higher temperature. We can go all the way up to 1, where we're now sampling randomness. You see, AI is a chaos machine, and we sample it using the most imprecise code possible, natural language. Now, you might recognize this. It's what we used to call a radio. Yeah. Well, when we think about temperature, it's like a dial. Algorithms are like a thermostat. You can turn them up or you can turn them down depending on the climate that you want. And so now we're going to play this game again, but we're going to play it from different stations along the radio. Are you ready? Okay. All right, so I am going to stand over here, and I am in sunny Florida, Miami Beach, and the temperature's really hot here. So I want you to answer that same problem, I love, but now shout out the most outlandish thing you can think of. Are you ready? I love. Absolutely. Did you have fun with that? How many people enjoyed that game? Yes, okay. If you enjoyed that game, you might be somebody who finds their creative climate in a game of chance. In a game of chance, we give up control as humans, and we forfeit it to the laws of probability, to statistics, to math, to randomness. Okay, now I'm going to take a step over here, and we are now in Savannah, Georgia. Now, I'm going to ask you the same thing, I love, but this time, whatever you do, do not say bananas. Do you understand the rules? No bananas. Are you ready? I love. Oh, did anybody say bananas? Yeah, you found your creative climate, right? Prohibitions spark creativity in rebels. All of you remember the most popular prohibition of our time? In the 1920s, the era of prohibition coincided with the most creative period in American art and history, the Roaring '20s. It's no mystery. Now, we are in Washington, D.C., the heart of negotiation. All right, now I'm going to tell you, I love, then you're going to answer. But when you answer, I want you to tell me what happens when you put red and blue next to each other. Are you ready? Red plus blue together. I love purple. All right, who said purple? Okay, maybe you should go to law school. Negotiation might be your creative climate. And it's pretty remarkable because most of the time when we think about two things that are polar opposites, we sometimes have analysis paralysis, or we might default to a zero-sum game, winners and losers. But with negotiation and those kinds of creative climates, what we're doing is something that game theorists call co-opetition. We're looking at how you put two things together to get something that's greater than each of them. And for those of you who recall 3D glasses, you know the lenses that you look through, red on one side, blue on the other? We only get a three-dimensional experience when we both look through both lenses at the same time. All right, now, I'm moving a little bit further north. I'm in my hometown, New York City, and we're gonna go to the boogie down Bronx. And I want you to think about, who is your favorite musician? All right, when I ask I love, answer with your favorite musician. I love. All right, did I hear Taylor Swift? Anybody? All right. So, how many of you found that game easier? Raise your hand. All right, if you liked that game, you're not alone. This is an improvisational game, and improvisational games are pretty common in the arts, right? We know of jazz music, and we know of improvisational comedy. Improvisation puts rules, but just a little bit of structure, right? And you know who else likes these kind of improvisational rules? Worms. It turns out that researchers at NYU studied worms and found out that when you put just a few obstacles in their path, they actually move faster. Do you know why? Because they have something to push off from. So think about that next time you have an improvisational structure in your life. Okay, we're almost done, and now we are in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, I don't know about you, today was a pretty nice day, but it's pretty cold here. And so I want you to think about the person that you would snuggle up with, okay? Could be a person, could be an animal. You don't have to say it out loud. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and when I say, I love, say the name out loud, okay? I love. All right. I love you. But you all had a different you, right? See, creativity can be precise and also innovative at the same time. And if any of you had the same you might want to talk after this talk. So, one of the things that I discovered with artificial intelligence and stations on a radio is that probably the most creative act is writing the rules. And we can establish different rule structures for different kinds of creative climates. Now, Some Like It Hot. Some Like It Hot is a classic American comedy. It was directed by Billy Wilder and came out in 1959 and had an all-star cast of Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis. Now, the story begins with the characters Jerry and Joe. Now, this is the 1920s, and they are working as musicians in a speakeasy. And, they're really just trying to make a buck and get ahead. But unfortunately, one night, they witness the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Chicago, which is run by a formidable mob boss. And as witnesses, their life is now in peril, and so they're going to need to get out of Dodge. So you can only imagine what happens. They decide to dress up as two women and to get on a train and to travel down south with an all-female jazz band, where you can only imagine they encounter the glamorous Sugar Kane, who is played by Marilyn Monroe. Now, when they get down south, Jerry used to be the straight man. He always wanted to follow the rules in Chicago. But when he gets to sunny Florida, he adopts the persona of Daphne, and he finds his creative sweet spot in this character, to the point at which he convinces himself to accept a marriage proposal. Now, Joe, on the other hand, well, Joe was always breaking the rules. I mean, he was a bit of a rebel in Chicago. He even got to the point where he lost the coats off both of their backs. But in Florida, he is in his creative element. He navigates from one persona to the other, first playing the character Josephine, and then here, Junior, to win the love of Sugar Kane. And what we learn from Some Like It Hot is that personas can help us to adapt to climates where we normally would feel uncomfortable. And what he says in his memoir is that, like Quibbits, we can be both at the same time, both sweet and hot. And fast, super fast. So, we now come to Marilyn. What we learn from Some Like It Hot is that artificial intelligence operates the exact same way. It uses personas as a way to navigate in climates where it may be uncomfortable. At one point, it can be a precise engineer. At another moment, a magnificent poet. And so what I want to leave you with today is three things. Number one, you all have a creative climate. Number two, you can dial up or dial down the temperature to suit whatever you need to do. And if you feel outside of your element and in a zone where you are terribly uncomfortable, you can tap into your inner Maryland, and guys, that's for you too, and put on a persona. Because after all, in order to solve some of the biggest problems of our time, including the rising temperatures of the Earth, we are going to need both people and machines to operate at our creative sweet spots. Now, I don't know about you, but I like it hot. Thank you very much.